what did we do when we simplified them? We found factors where one of the factors was what? A perfect square. And then if we took the perfect square, that answer went to the outside, everything else stayed on the inside. When we were multiplying, what was the rule?
Inside by inside, outside by outside.
Right, I can only do the outsides by the outsides and the insides by the insides. I can't cross over that radical bar. Okay, it's kind of like a barrier. And then division, our rule was what? I can never have the radical where? In the denominator. How did I get rid of it?
Times it by itself.
Times it by itself, exactly right. So the last thing in this section was conjugates. Basically, this carries on with the division rule in a sense, but instead of just having one radical in the bottom, we have a quantity. What's a quantity mean in math? An amount, somebody said, okay? That's one version of quantity. Another one is when you have like an expression. So like x plus 4, you could consider that as a quantity and put parentheses around it. All right, so with ours, our quantity is going to include a radical. So something like this. See how I have a radical in the denominator, but it's not the only thing in the denominator like it was the other day? This would be considered a quantity. I could really put parentheses around that whole thing, and it's kind of a unit. It goes everywhere together. All right, so because there's a radical in the bottom, we're still going to do exactly what we did the other day and multiply it, like Hannah said, by itself. The only difference here is this. So we're still going to multiply by the denominator over itself. But you also change the operator. What's the operator again? The operator is that sign inside my quantity. So I'm going to change it. If it's minus, I'm going to turn it into addition. If it's addition, I'm going to turn it into subtraction. So here then, I'm going to still use 6 and the square root of 3, 6 the square root of 3, but I'm going to turn it to plus and plus. So it's the exact same terms, except we change the sign. And again now, I'm going to multiply straight across, but now we might have to do a couple things. So if it's easier here, I'd come back here and put parentheses around this. And really, if I have two terms inside of a parentheses, or two terms that are working together, what would I call that? What's a prefix that means two? What do you ride as a little kid? A bicycle, right? So this is called a what did you call it last year? Binomial. Exactly right. So these are binomials. If I have a binomial times a binomial, how did I multiply it? A special process. FOIL, right? FOIL, first, outside, inside, and last. Remember that? So I'm going to multiply straight across. I might have to use FOIL, or I might have to distribute. What's it mean to distribute?
Like multiply by each of them.
Yeah, to multiply this number through over here, okay? So on the top, I'm going to distribute. I'm going to take this 8 and multiply it by both terms on the inside. Okay? So what's 8 times 6? Easy enough. And then when I take 8 times my radical, what do I get? Outsides by outsides, inside by inside, so I get what? 8 square root of 3. I just put them together because one's on the outside and one's on the inside. Now we're going to try to FOIL this. Now here's where you're going to cheat a little bit. And why we do this, if I have a negative and a positive, my O's and my I's in FOIL are always going to cancel each other out. That makes sense? So you really don't have to do the entire process on the bottom. If you want to, and we'll do it the first time to show you this, but they will cancel each other out every single time because they have different signs. So again, when I taught FOIL, I put the little letters up here. You do not have to do this either. But they just told me then what I'm going to multiply. The F's, the O's, the I's, and the L's. So if I do my first terms, what do I get? Come on. 36. Outside terms, what do I get? Where the two O's are, if I multiply those together, what do I get? Remember, outsides by outsides, insides by insides, so I get 6 square root of 3. My inside terms, what do I get? I get negative 6 square root of 3, right? This is a negative, this is a positive, so this has to turn into a negative. And then outside times inside, I just put them together. And then my last terms, what do I get? What did we say the other day when we take a radical times itself? We get that number, right? So the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 turns out to be 3. What's my sign for the 3? Negative, right? One positive, one negative makes the whole thing negative. So that would be the process of FOIL right there. But again, notice here, my outsides and my insides have the exact same things, but they have different signs, so they cancel each other out. And again, this will happen every single time. That's why we use a conjugate. So on the top, can I simplify anything here? No. We didn't really talk about adding and subtracting radicals, but in a sense, what happens here, this is like saying 8x. Can I take 48 plus 8x? No. And then on the bottom, what do I have? 33. Now here's the last little bit. Can I simplify these numbers on the outside? If I could. If this was a 4, for instance, and they're all even, can I simplify all 3 of them at the same time? Yes, because they're all on the outside together. Now obviously this is an odd number, and so we don't have a common term between those 3 things. But if you could, go ahead and simplify those because they're all on the outside. Okay? So, kind of either you guys are half sleeping or you're totally lost. So let's do it again. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite my problem. What am I going to write as my second fraction? Multiply by what? Perfect. I'm going to do that both on the top and on the bottom. Okay? Again now, if you want to come back and put parentheses around all this, that's fine. Anytime that I have a quantity, I can always put parentheses around the problem. Now, distribute across the top. Try it out, see what you get. Again, take this 4 times that term, and then the 4 times that term. See what you get. And then if you get that far and you want to try it, do the FOIL on the bottom. But remember, the FOIL on the bottom, I really only have to do the first terms and multiply them together and the last terms and multiply them together. Because my O's and my I's are always going to cancel each other out. How do we do? So again, I distribute on the top, 4 times 5. Outsides by outside, so I get 8 square root of 3. On the bottom, I'm doing my first terms. That's how I got 25. And then my last terms. So I'm still doing outsides by outsides and insides by insides. But then when I do the insides by insides, I bust that 3 out of there. So I'm taking 3 times the 4, and that's how I got my 12. That makes sense? And then it's negative because I had one positive and one negative, and then I just subtract. So again, if I could, if this would have been a 12 or a 14, all of them are even on the outside, I could have reduced that. But it wasn't, so no big deal. Questions there? Want to see any more of those kind? Okay.